On Tuesday, Georgia election officials Brad Raffensperger, Gabe Sterling, and Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers are expected to testify at the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th siege at the Capitol. They are expected to testify about how they refused Trump's efforts to force them to overturn Joe Biden's election win in their battleground states.
We'll show evidence of the president's involvement in this scheme. We'll also, again, show evidence about what his own lawyers came to think about this scheme. And we'll show courageous state officials who stood up and said they wouldn't go along with this plan to either call legislatures back into session or decertify the results for Joe Biden. The system held because a lot of state and local elections officials upheld their oath to the Constitution. A lot of them Republicans as well as Democrats.
All right, Page Pate is a constitutional law attorney and a criminal defense attorney. Paige, so good to see you. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. So how significant, in your view, will Tuesday's hearings be as the committee makes the case that Donald Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election results?
Well, Fred, I think it's going to be very important because now, coming out of Georgia, we don't just have implications that Trump was involved in doing something that could be illegal. Trump is on tape, and he's specifically asking the Secretary of State here in Georgia to try to find votes that simply didn't exist. And with some of the other evidence that we've heard so far play out during these, can be an attempt, I think, by Trump and his lawyers to spin that evidence, to try to put it, into a context. Hey, we weren't really serious about this. We were considering different legal options. The difference here is there is a tape of that phone call, which our Secretary of State thought was a threat, and that has already been testified to in a criminal grand jury that is currently sitting in Fulton County, Georgia, and I expect we're going to hear more about it in the hearing to come this week.
And then there's this new poll just out today showing that most Americans believe Donald Trump should face charges for his role in the Capitol riot. According to the ABC Ipsos poll that just came out today, 58% of Americans believe Trump should be charged with a crime for his role in the riot. 2 congressmen were on the Sunday talk shows today and also called for Trump to be held accountable. Take a listen.
I certainly think the president is guilty of knowing what he did, seditious conspiracy, being involved in these, kind of different segments of pressuring DOJ, vice president, et cetera. I think what we're presenting before the American people certainly would rise to a level of criminal involvement by a president and definitely failure of the oath.
There needs to be accountability. If you allow impunity for attempts at unconstitutional seizures of power, which is what a coup is, then you're inviting it again in the future. And to be a strong, self-sustaining, self-respecting democracy, we can't allow people to decide that they are above the law.
So then ultimately it will be up to the Justice Department, right? And how much of an uphill battle could it be potentially, even though there has been all of this incriminating testimony and possibly upcoming, like in the Raffensperger case, there might be more evidence showing that the president may have done something criminal?
Well, Fred, I think right now there are 2 different tracks. There's the track with the Justice Department, and we know the Justice Department is really anxious to get transcripts from all of the testimony that the January 6th committee has taken during the course of its investigation. That is supposed to be provided to the department perhaps next month in July. They can review it all, determine if there are federal charges like seditious conspiracy that they can bring on the federal level. Meanwhile, in Georgia, a state criminal grand jury has been meeting now for several weeks. They've had 50 witnesses expected to testify, including the Secretary of State. And again, in Georgia, there's going to be direct evidence of Trump's personal involvement in the electoral process after the votes have been counted. So there's potential state criminal charges, potential federal criminal charges. We'll just have to see how the evidence shakes out.
All right, and all of that, of course, again, is predicated on that call. The case in Georgia is predicated on the call, and now what U.S. Congress is going to be focusing on this week is predicated on that call. Here it is.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
So this week, involving that House committee, what will the questions be to the Secretary of State Raffensperger, who was on the other end of that call?
Well, Fred, there's a lot that went into that call other than that very short clip that you just played. I mean, that's really the important quote, but that was a long phone call. And the Secretary of State has already said that he believes the context of that call was a threat from the former president, not saying, look, I wish I had more votes, or isn't it possible there are some uncounted votes, but I want you to find me a specific number of votes so we can overturn the election in Georgia. So I think the committee is going to ask the Secretary of State, what went into that phone call? What were you thinking as the president told you these things? What actions, if any, did you take after that phone call? All of that context, which, by the way, he's already testified to in the state criminal grand jury. We're now going to hear about it in public on TV.
Yeah, and one of this show's producers reminds me that was a 1-hour phone call. So in your view,
right,
will the American public be hearing a lot more of the call, more than just the soundbite that has been played many times?
I expect so. And one other thing, Fred, I believe the Secretary of State testified for 5 hours in front of the Fulton County criminal grand jury. So we know it's about more than just a few seconds on the phone.
Yeah. All right. Page Pate, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And